Howdy, folks. Live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky. And today, I actually want to take a closer look at this Club Random podcast episode featuring Bill Burr. Now, the Club Random podcast is hosted by Bill Maher. Bill Maher. And this particular episode did not come out, I would say, super recently, as in the past couple days. According to YouTube, it came out about 11 days ago. So that's like 7 years ago in social media years. But it is still very relevant, and people are talking about it. I saw a lot of clips on Instagram and stuff, mainly the clip when they're going back and forth about the Palestine college protests. And it really looks like from that clip that Bill Burr is really coming at. It's going to get annoying that they're both named Bill, I got to say. But Burr and Maher are really kind of going at it about this thing. And from the clip, it seems like this is a major part of the episode. Because normally when you see a clip that's about 45 seconds, 30 seconds to a minute long, you assume that this is a smaller segment of a much larger conversation. And upon watching the episode in its entirety, I found that no, actually the discussion itself for this particular topic is not much longer than the clip we saw. But that clip we saw, which we are going to look at towards the end of this episode, because there's actually a lot I want to take a look at in this episode. I found it very interesting. But the clip we saw, the clip that you most likely saw, in regards to these protests, was probably the best summation of the episode in its totality. It kind of culminated every single thing that I then gathered upon watching the episode for myself. Now, what I find interesting about this is a personal thing and then a more general thing. The personal thing is I have my predispositions and my pre-existing opinions as they pertain to both Bill Maher and Bill Burr. I am more partial to Bill Burr. I was a huge Bill Burr fan. I am a Bill Burr fan to this day. I will say that I've kind of gotten a little less involved in his goings-on of late in the past couple years. I still think he's hilarious. I still think he's one of the greatest comics of all time. He does seem to have softened up a little bit. Bill Burr is a guy who really kind of made his marbles. Is that an expression? By being this like Boston ranty type of dude. And he still is that dude, but I think having kids and sorry to say, I think being married to a black woman who is very nice. I like Nia, but I think a lot of his perspectives have changed in a way where I don't find him quite as relatable, at least in terms of his political takes, as I used to. He's always been more of a liberalish guy, but as of late, he just seems to be Hollywood's ideal like outlaw guy. And I don't mean this as an insult, but he's kind of like, oh, this guy, you never know what he's going to say. He's a loose cannon. And it's like, yeah, but he is in like every movie. He was on Breaking Bad. He just came out with that Seinfeld movie on Netflix. He's producing his own stuff. Like he's becoming part of the in club. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. I wouldn't say he has graduated to the preachy thing that Dave Chappelle is on. I don't say that at all, actually. But I will say that he's just grown up. And maybe I sound like a douche for the same way people love bands and then their next album comes out and they're like, why don't you do like more stuff like your old stuff? It's like, well, because, I'm not that guy anymore. This is the guy I am now. I just am noting that he appears to have softened up a little bit. And I think a large part of that is being married, having children, and also kind of falling into this like mainstream success that sort of just kind of puts up bumper rails around what you're allowed to say and think. And I don't think he's doing that consciously. I just think it's the people he's around, genuinely. Bill Maher, on the other hand, I think Bill Maher is a good I don't know the exact term for this. I want to say litmus test, weather vane, buoy in the water, marker. Bill Maher is good for that because he has been the same guy for like 40 years. I think his first, as far as I'm aware, his first like real mainstream success was when he did Politically Incorrect in the 90s. I remember my grandmother liked him a lot. I used to watch him as a kid. He's done a bunch of other things, Real Time with Bill Maher. He always has some type of political show. And of course, now he has his Club Random podcast. But he's always been, in my opinion, the same guy. And the reason why that is interesting to me is because as society has ebbed and flowed around him, it's been interesting to see how Bill Maher was once thought of as this, like, I would say very liberal guy, this like kind of like smug, pompous, like snarky, like cunty, new rule, that type of guy, like liberal, like, the classic boomer thing where they think it's like this super edgy thing to be like against religion. It's like, all right, dude, we all graduated 7th grade. We all get it. Okay. This isn't 1991 anymore when it's like edgy to be like, and really the Bible? Come on, guys. Like, we get it, dude. But watching Bill Maher kind of evolve, quote unquote, from this like liberalish guy to now seems to have a lot of takes recently that like I agree with, that seem to lean more towards the conservative side of things. He's anti-cancel culture. He's like, he says what he thinks about the Israel-Palestine thing that doesn't fit the like mainstream, cool, popular, liberal narrative. And a lot of examples like that. But I think that's cool because what we're really watching is he hasn't changed. Society has changed. And now what used to be considered, I would say, left of center, kind of, liberal, moderate ideals 30 years ago are now considered like right-wing, almost far right-wing ideals. So as of late, Bill Maher has kind of grown on me. And I've kind of like leaned off of Bill Burr a little bit. So in this weird place, I'm still partial to Bill Burr, but like they almost kind of are converging a little bit in my opinion. But after watching the whole episode, I can honestly say that clip makes more sense. So before we get into the other elements of what I want to discuss, let's take a look first at that intro.
Bill?
Hello, William.
You're there.
Yeah, so we're not confused. All right. What's going on, sir?
Man
Nice
of
to
your
see you.
word.
Yeah. I showed up.
You showed up. You
There
said
you
you
go.
would and you did. That
I
means
did.
a lot to me. I appreciate
That's
it.
it. Well, the bar is set low if that's all it is. Like, who doesn't show up?
People, are you kidding?
Well, that's why I don't
are you
have
in show
guests.
business?
So I know that's not like anything crazy, but for those of you who are like pay attention to people's body language and things like that, there's a noticeable energy there. Just in that introduction, it's awkward. And I get like anytime you're doing a podcast like that and you have to like just jump right into a natural seeming conversation. And I know this from doing podcasts. We've done 300 something episodes of the Live from the Studio podcast with guests and things like that. And I always say it's not really truly a podcast until you're about 15, 20 minutes in, generally. Sometimes sooner, sometimes, right off the bat, if you have enough of a connection, sometimes never. Sometimes the whole episode is like just trying to pull teeth. But it's not really a podcast or a conversation until you forget the mics are there. That's what I've noticed. So I acknowledge that there's going to be a normal amount of tension, but they almost kind of jumped into this with that same type of energy where like you go to like a house party or you run into somebody at the bar and there's no avoiding them and you're not on bad terms. You're just kind of on like weird terms. Like last time I saw that guy, like it was kind of like we kind of got in a little bit of an argument. Like it's no big deal. Like we're dudes, whatever. And you're just kind of like, you can't not talk to them. So you're like, yeah, what's up, man? Yeah, like, yep, here, yeah, just hanging out. Like it's that type of energy where it's like, I don't know how to explain it any better than that or if it's possible, but it's that type of energy that I can't help but notice. But jumping into the more crux of it, what you notice in this show is that Bill Burr is a legitimately funny guy. He's a true comedian. He's the type of dude you'd want to grab a beer with. He's the type of dude you actually want to listen to on a podcast because he's conversational. You'll notice with actually funny people, when they do stand-up, their stand-up bits actually tend to not live up to as funny as you know them to be in real life. And it's actually the opposite with unfunny people, where you could see a person on stage kill it, and then you talk to them in real life and you're like, this guy's really not that funny in real life. And that's the difference. That's the difference between being funny, a comedian like Bill Burr, and what I would consider, I would call Bill Maher, not saying he can't be funny, but Bill Maher is what I would call a humorist. Now, I don't know what a humorist is. It just sounds like one of those, like, you know how like when you like read a Mark Twain quote and it's like kind of funny? Mark Twain says you can't paint a fence with 2 brushes and a stick, and it's like humorous. Or like, you know, Shakespearean comedy. It's like, wherefore art thou bosoms? And you're like, I see how that is scientifically funny. I don't know. It's like a person who is like in the study of funny. Like it's like their PhD. Like they have a PhD in analyzing and understanding how to be funny. Versus someone with a true sense of humor is just naturally funny. I don't know what their relationship is. But immediately from the jump, and I'm saying the opening dialogue of this podcast, you get this immediate sense that they are on edge. Not necessarily in a bad way or an animus way, but there's a tension. There's a palpable tension. And I would say mainly coming from Bill Burr, to be honest, to be fair. Bill Burr seems to be in attack mode throughout the entirety of this show. He does it in that very sarcastic, blue-collar, Boston asshole type of way, which I love. I'm the same way when I'm kind of like coming at somebody, but like doing it in like a non-aggressive, but like funny, sarcastic, like, yeah, whatever, dude way. But that's what Bill Burr's doing. Takes one to know one. I see it immediately. And you have to wonder why. And I guess it's not a secret why. Bill Burr has a certain opinion of Bill Maher that is accurate. It's not the first time they've met. Bill Burr has been a guest on Maher's panels and shows in the past. They know each other. They're 2 very high-profile people in show business in the comedy world. They know each other. They've worked together. They get it. And Bill Burr kind of, and I hate to say it because after watching this episode, I kind of see Bill Maher in a different light now. I used to see him as this very, like I said, pompous, stuck up, arrogant, like, smug, whatever type of dude that sometimes would say things I agree with and other times would annoy the shit out of me. Now, I kind of see him, I almost feel a little bad for him. And I don't mean that in a condescending, mean girl way. I saw a soft side of him that Bill Burr exposed. Not in a very nice way, but Bill Burr went in there with such a classic, tin knocker, blue collar type of like breaking your balls type of energy that it brought Bill Maher back to what he really is, which is a nerd. And there's nothing wrong with being a nerd. But Bill Maher's natural comedic talent, his ability to actually be conversationally funny, paled in comparison to Bill Burr's. And when Bill Maher was kind of outclassed on that front, you kind of saw him in a more like soft, vulnerable way, where almost you kind of felt bad for him at certain points when Bill Burr was coming at him because you're like, dude, lay off a little bit. Like, he's not like your boy from the construction site. Like, this guy is a nerd. This guy was probably bullied a bunch. Not saying Bill Burr wasn't, or that everyone hasn't been bullied, but this guy is definitely one of those guys, as we'll talk about in a minute, that like wasn't always thought of as the funny guy. He wasn't the class clown. He wasn't the person that if you ask their friends, like, oh, who's the funniest person you grow? Oh, it's got to be Bill Maher. Oh, Billy Maher, yeah, he's hilarious, dude. He makes everyone fucking flip out laughing. He's the best. He wasn't that guy. You can just tell. He is a guy who has put an immense amount of work into studying how to be funny. And he's done a good job, and he's funnier than the average person. But jumping into my first real point of note, other than just the general vibe of the whole thing, which definitely smooths out and gets more normal and flows back to awkward again several times. It doesn't really ever not have an air of tension. It just becomes more of a normal level of tension that almost is kind of funny at a certain point, which is props to both of them, honestly. Genuinely props to both of them. Very professionally done. And maybe that's just their shtick. But I think the first thing Bill does, and again, I think this is tactical, is he kind of goes after every like chink, not talking of every chink in Bill Maher's armor. He picks out the things that Bill Maher, Jesus, this is going to get annoying with the Bills, that Maher is potentially insecure about, and just laser focuses on them in a way that puts Maher on the defensive from the jump. And I think this is in part a little bit of potentially an insecurity on Bill Burr's part. And I don't think it's a bad insecurity or even an unfounded insecurity. The insecurity that I'm referring to from Bill Burr's part is that Bill Burr, like we said, is kind of a classic blue-collar guy. And as a blue-collar guy myself, non-college educated, I kind of do have a certain, I don't want to say chip on my shoulder. I'm not like legitimately like thinking about it all the time. But when I do run into somebody who like makes it their whole personality that like, I went to Harvard, or I do this and this is my title. Oh, it's Dr. this, not Mr. that. And it's like, when I run into those people who make being smart their whole personality, or like being like, there's like a certain level of like elitism to them. And I already have in my mind this idea that they probably think a certain way about me because I don't have those accolades or this level of education or whatever. I kind of do go out of my way subtly. If I'm getting the vibe that they're like really holding on to that and really holding on to those opinions, I definitely go out of my way to kind of knock them down to size, to kind of say things and kind of make them look like the dumb one, not in a bully way. I won't do it if they're not like that. But if they are like that, I absolutely do that. I feel like it's my duty, honestly, to put them in their place subtly. That's a thing that guys do. It just is. And that's a thing that a guy like Bill Burr is going to naturally gravitate towards when he's talking to a guy like Bill Maher, who makes his whole thing, knowing big words, as we'll look at later, and like having the correct opinion about all this stuff. Like, Bill Burr is going to go at him in the places where he feels like he can, to knock him down to his level. And the first way he does that is kind of make fun of his age. You can see in this clip, Maher is attempting to kind of like put a little link of like relatability between them. Like, oh yeah, we're from the same generation. And Bill Burr is quick to just point out like, dude, you're 13 years older than me. That's a long fucking time. Now, I actually agree with Bill Maher in this circumstance. Like, I think Maher is like 67 or something, 66, and Burr is like 53. 13, that is a difference, but at the same time, I've always said like, dude, once you're a man, you're a man. I noticed that working in bars and restaurants and stuff, and just working in general, like once you get to like your mid 20s, a handful of years is nothing. Like, there's not really that much difference between a 29-year-old and a 25-year-old, and it only becomes more like that the older you get. Like, there's not that much of a difference between a 50-year-old and a 42-year-old. And so by the time you get to 66 and 53, it's like, all right, dude, we're both men. Like, this isn't grade school where it's like, oh, you're in 8th grade and I'm in 7th grade, you fucking loser. Like, that stuff kind of goes away as you get older. But Bill Burr knows that Bill Maher is kind of one of those guys that really tries to hold on to, like, you know, he's a single guy, never married, no kids, just kind of living that bachelor lifestyle. And I'm not judging it one way or the other, but you can tell several times during this conversation that Bill Maher really does not want to think of himself as an old guy. Nobody really does. But there's several examples of this, and this is the first one I'll play for you.
I think that might be the difference in our generations, which is not that. I mean, we're maybe like 13 years apart.
You're one of my elders, man. I respect you for that.
I feel like I'm in the Reagan-Mondale debate.
No, I just
Now
remember when you did my podcast, you kept getting like, I'm not that much older than you.
And I'm not. And
Dude, 13 years is a long fucking time.
Well, I think the point I made then, and I'll remake it for you, is that to anyone young, who is what we care about in this in this discussion, because it's like, well, we don't want to lose that audience. Trust me, when you're 25, you and I are the same. And I told you this story about...
How dare you?
When
you dress like you paint. Look at you.
When Leno and Conan were going through that whole thing that we all remember as comedians so well, remember the fight for the crown at the Tonight Show? Mm-hmm. I think it was 2009. And I was with my girlfriend was 25 at the time, and we were talking about it. And I said, well, you know, it's a big age difference. Leno's 59 and Conan's 46. And she went, yeah, that's the same thing to me. And I always remember that. So we are the younger audience.
No, if you and I are just like hanging out, talking, but if we go back far enough.
You're a dad.
If we go back like.
That adds 10 years. You're married and a dad. See,
no, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
You just hate kids.
I do. But like having never gotten married, not married, not kid, that definitely closes that gap. Anyway, the point being...
I don't like how you just made that point and then said anyway really quickly before I could refute it. Anyway. Did you learn that in debating class?
I did.
Because you said anyway, I'm going to roll with that? No.
Well, I mean, you got to play.
No, but just like, I mean, you're like pre-stand-up spotlight, you know, as far as like, you know...
What does that mean?
I mean, that's just, I mean, you were like comedy on the road, evening at the Improv. I mean, that's a whole different generation than mine.
So you get what I'm saying there. First of all, there's multiple lines of attack that Bill Burr is employing. Not only does he not, he like, normally that's a thing you'd be like, come on, man, you're in the same generation. And he's like, all right, you know what I'm saying? He's like, nah, I'm just fucking with you. No, Bill Burr is like, no, dude, don't try to make us the same age. You're fucking older than me, bro. You're a different generation. Then he comes at his clothes and stuff like that. He's like, what you wearing? And he makes fun of his clothes a bunch throughout the thing. Like, there is a noticeable attack mode that Bill Burr is in that I get. I know exactly where he's coming from, and I know exactly why he's doing it. I've never met Bill Maher personally. I've never met Bill Burr personally, believe it or not. Never met any of the people I've ever talked about on this show personally, just as a general rule. But I trust Bill Burr's level of social awareness that if he's coming at Bill Maher like this, and they do know each other on a personal level to some degree, at least in a business context, that his demeanor is probably warranted. I'm going to give Bill Burr the benefit of the doubt, because if I went into this with zero context on either one of them, I would assume that Bill Burr is being the dick here. I really would, genuinely. Here's another example of this. We'll just kind of run through all the age examples of him just constantly like calling it back to that.
I kind of have this thing like when I get around like the 24-hour news zombies, I just, Jesus Christ, was that Geritol? Nobody under the age of 50 got that one. Remember that? I was on the Lawrence Welk show. He used to peddle the Geritol.
To my point, the 25-year-old is watching this going, look at these two old guys. They're not going, oh, the guy with the cigar is obviously 13 years younger.
I know, but you have to go all the way down to 25 to appear my age.
Well...
you can see. Look at the difference. Look at the difference. You can just see the way we dress. We're not different people. This is like, you know, you come from, you know, the slacks generation. Like slacks were still a thing.
These are not
slacks were a thing.
No, I look good. That's the difference. Is that you were
do
wearing
look good.
You're wearing
You're not gonna
sneakers.
throw that in my
You got
face.
you got a t-shirt on. Like
You look like a fucking defendant. You look like you're trying to beat a drinking and driving charge. He doesn't have any priors, Your Honor. Look at him. He's wearing his Chelsea boots. He's a fucking, what do they call it? A productive member of society. He needs his car for work. I think that this should be a suspension, not a full-on.
That's good.
So again, like this is like several minutes later down the line in the conversation where there's kind of a, Maher tries to go back to like, but now you see what I mean, like to a 25-year-old, like they just look at us and see two old men, which again, I agree with. Look, first of all, there's not much difference between a 30-year-old and a 40-year-old when you're 20. When I was 20, I thought 30 was like, oh, I mean, you gotta have had it figured out by now. If the 20-year-old, I don't even want to get into what 20-year-old me would think about me right now. But that's just what you think when you're that age. You always think the next age is, like, as often as I learn about how nothing changed, you're always the same person. You're always the same person. You just all of a sudden are magically a different age. You're like, damn, this is what being 25 is? This is what being 26 is? Oh, now I'm me and I'm just 31? And like, no matter how many times I learn that over and over again, every year of my life, I still subconsciously have this idea that it's going to be majorly different next year. Like when I picture myself 10 years from now in my 40s, I'm like, oh, dude, would I even be able to have a conversation with myself? Who will I be? You, dude, you're going to be you. But even in this conversation where you normally, at a certain point, you would expect someone to like let it slide, especially if you're picking up on the fact that it's definitely something that they are like hung up on, just to be like, yeah. You just kind of just let it go. If you gather that it's something that they're like a little bit on insecure about, you just kind of let them have it. Like, okay. And again, it's not that crazy of a point to make that a 66-year-old and a 53-year-old have far more in common and could be considered the same generation. Literally, you can be the same generation or aren't generations like 15, 20 years. Like Bill Maher is making a normal point and Bill Burr is making him look like a fool as a result. Which is funny, dude. You cannot deny how amusing this interaction is. It just is. You're not used to seeing Bill Maher like this. And I think it's also because he does smoke weed. He's probably high right now. And if I remember anything from being high, it's like, you are not you. Like, if you're a wisecracking type of witty guy that's confident to say something and blah, 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 blah. And if a joke bombs, who gives a fuck? Y'all know I'm funny anyway. I'll get you next time. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Like, you just kind of go for it, gunslinging fucking takes and opinions and jokes and whatever you want to do. When you're high, or at least when I'm high, dude, I am not me. I know I was saying, 40-year-old me, would that be me? No, that would be me. Me on 2 puffs of weed is not me. It's not me. That's why I don't like it, really. And there's one more example of this as it goes through that I'll play you just to drive this point home. You know how much I love to drive points home.
You ever get busted for that?
What?
Drinking and driving?
Yes. I had a DUI in 92. It was a nightmare. Could have wrecked my life because it was just as I was starting Politically Incorrect. And I had to get a special dispensation from the court to interrupt my 14-week corrective program that you have to go to when you get a DUI. If they
would have killed to watch you in that classroom, having lost all that control.
Oh.
And just having to sit there in that desk.
Well, it was everybody who got a DUI. I mean, it was just a cross-section of society. We weren't criminals. We were just like people, just douchebag millennials coming home from club, and we had one too many and were driving too fast. When I was stopped, I happened to be wearing leopard print shoes. Now, if you think I wasn't going to get a ticket that night,
So I want to stop it there. And the other thing there, if you notice at the end of that clip, and Bill Burr doesn't even touch upon this. So maybe he didn't notice it, or he just let that one slide because it was a good conversation about that segment is probably the best one where they talk about DUIs because it honestly is such a fucking racket. But Maher refers to himself in 1992 as, we were all just douchebag millennials. Now, here's the funny thing about that. As I mentioned earlier, Bill Maher is 66-ish. I gathered that when they talk about the Beatles later, and he says he was 9 when this song came out in like 60-something. So I was like, okay, so he was probably born in like 1958-ish, like that ballpark. That's not a millennial, dude. That's not a millennial. The oldest millennials in 1992, when you got a DUI, were 9. I think 1983 is the absolute earliest a millennial can be born. Anything before that is Generation X. I was born in 92, so I'm a millennial. I'm actually closer to the tail end of millennial. I think Gen Z starts around like 97 or something. So I'm actually towards the tail end of millennial. Someone call that like a zillennial. I might not be quite a zillennial. I feel like that's like my brother, 96 or something. But like, you're not even Gen X, Bill Maher. Gen X, I think, started in like 1968. I think they go in like 15-year increments or somewhere around that ballpark. It's all arbitrary, really. But the main point is they go in like 15-year increments, 15 to 20. So if you're born in 58 or somewhere around that ballpark, you're a boomer, dude. You're 2 generations previous to millennial. But you're referring to yourself as a millennial casually. I don't know if that's a mistake. I don't know if he meant something different there, but it just is more icing on the cake when you add it into everything else we just discussed about this like strong sort of denial, I want to say, of being an older person. That like when left to his own devices, Bill Maher in his eyes is like just a crazy kid. Just a crazy kid hanging out. You look at the set, and it's like, the leopard print cushions and it's just very, it's not a 60-something-year-old guy's setup, And I don't know. I'm not saying anything bad about the guy, but when you add in all the things, like never married, no kids, fuck religion, I'm a millennial, I'm not that much older than you. Yeah, in 2009, my girlfriend was 25. Okay, dude, first of all, in 2009, you were 51. So in 2009, you had a 25-year-old girlfriend. You're 51. You're double her age. Now, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's not illegal, certainly. You're an adult. When I first did the math, I thought 41. But that would have been 1999 if Bill Maher was born in 1958, 7, 9, whatever he was, late 50s. And then I thought about it. I was like, wait, no, that's 51. So when I thought it was 41, I was like, okay, that's not even really necessarily weird. I mean, I get it. Like, it's still a 16-year age gap. Like, who doesn't find a 25-year-old woman attractive? Obviously. I don't think there's ever been a point in any man's life, no matter how old you are, that you don't look at a girl in her 20s and go, Jesus Christ. At least it hasn't even come close to happening for me yet. But 51 is like, okay, now we're talking, like, now you're doubling up on someone in age. And again, if it was a situation where it's like, okay, like, he's a regular 50-something-year-old dude. He's got a successful career. He acts his age. He dresses his age. He carries himself like that. And he just happens to have a young girlfriend. Like, look, there was a 25-year-old woman who was interested in him. She's attractive. He's attracted to her. She's attracted to him. Like, okay, dude, I guess he's just killing it. Like, he's not, like, trying to live that life. He just had a 25-year-old girl who was interested in him, and he said, yeah, why the fuck not? I mean, what the hell? That's a different thing. But when you add all of it together, it becomes a thing. But so that's point one. That is point one. How he goes after the age. That's one line of attack. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of alluding back to what I actually consider to be the crux of this conversation. And that is, again, the juxtaposition of the kind of comedian Bill Burr is and the kind of comedian Bill Maher is. And I'm not even going to tell you what to think about this. I'm just going to show you the clip and then we'll discuss it.
but it all comes from you are an everyman. Every crate you lifted, all that stuff, they see in you. And you're of course very funny and great at your craft, but like there is a emotional connection that they have to you.
Well, you know what it is?
It's a very valuable thing.
I think that where I grew up though is another thing, because I'm growing up. I'm trying to, like, I have a hard time thinking of people in my life, all my childhood friends, everybody I worked with, every place I worked, everybody was funny. There's a weird thing about.
Really?
Oh my God. Dude, there's
Wicked funny?
Dude, there's guys I went to high school with, I'm still not as funny as they were. And the thing about it was, what made them even funnier was they weren't trying to be funny.
Well, they must be really pissed off because they're still carrying the crates.
No, they just had good childhoods. They had cool parents, and like they were happy. And
you said they're funnier than you.
I mean, as far as I remember, like they you know.
Yeah.
Like some of the guys that I can't even explain. Like there's a difference. Like I tell the story, they were the story. Like these guys, they would get into a fucking fist fight. They didn't care where they were, and I always like just looked at they were like they were free. I just loved like I would be like,
because they were kids. Because when we're kids, everything's funny. Everybody seems funny. You're just filled with so much extra energy, and part of it you expend just giggling and laughing. If you're in a good mood and you're not, when you're not.
No, these guys were fucking funny.
I don't think.
I
so.
remember one of my.
Remember it
you
that
hear?
way.
No, I had a buddy of mine. He fucking, all my friends gambled. He was losing so much fucking money on the Houston Rockets. He kept doubling down, thinking that they were going to win, and they kept losing games. They had these great players. And he literally called long distance information, not joking. He said, in Houston, last name Olajuwon. And he didn't say he was going to do it. He went up and did it. And we just looked over and we just started fucking he was high, but he literally thought that he was going to get Akeem Olajuwon on the phone and he was going to read him the riot act the way he played that night. Like, I'm talking about that shit.
Okay.
Like, I would have done that as the joke just so everyone would hear it. He did it dead serious. I'm talking about guys that would go in to get their hair cut and they had a fucking joint behind their ear and they would comb out their hair and it would fall. Like, they were fucking hilarious. And they weren't trying to be, just how they lived their lives was fucking hilarious. By the way, that was the same guy. My friends will watch this. I know who he's talking about. The same guy did both of those.
I guess I'm less of a fan of practical jokes than many others are. I guess I'm more a verbal, but like
Wait, there was no practical joke in there.
Well,
that was a guy.
When you actually do it.
He was speaking from his heart.
No, the Olajuwon thing. I mean, to do that.
He like legit thought he was going to get him on the phone.
I understand. To me, that's a practical joke. It's practical.
I thought a practical joke is if I stick a bucket of water above the door and you open it and it gets you all wet.
That's another kind.
And then I go, auga, with a horn.
So now we're really getting into, I think, the core of this discussion, which is Bill Burr saying, dude, the kids I grew up around, they were fun. They were all funnier than me. Like where I grew up, like these type of guys and just like saying the type of stuff they would do. And Bill Maher's immediate reaction to that is to be like, what? Really? No way. No way. Like he can't comprehend that just regular people can be funny or as funny as a guy on their level. It's a very blatant display of elitism. Elitism, I don't know how to say that cool. Elitism? Bill Burr is the type of guy who's like, yeah, man, I'm a stand-up comedian. He recognizes, obviously, he's a funny guy, but he doesn't hold in his heart that he's like this like superhuman level of like untouchable hilarity that like no regular dude that works construction or is a bartender somewhere could ever touch just because he's a professional comedian and the other guy's not. Bill Maher does. Bill Maher is in disbelief that there could exist people that could ever rival their level of humor. And that's the difference. Because you can tell that there's an element of insecurity or gatekeepiness to his position. Talking about Bill Maher now. You can always tell when you're talking to someone who is insecure about how good they are at something, they are the ones that are far less likely to give someone else their flowers. When you're good at something and you're truly good at something, you're not scared of someone else doing it better. You don't gatekeep the secret or like, oh, like you talk to certain people who like find a certain level of success and you ask them, they give you that classic douchey, like not that successful, but like think they're successful answer. Like, man, it's just hard work. Just hard work, man. It's like, can you like maybe give me a pointer of like, you know, what was kind of your first foot forward? How'd you get in the door? Like, because obviously you had a helping hand. Obviously you got your foot in the door somehow through a connection or this or that. But like, you don't want me to be tipped off to that because there is an element of like, and I'm not talking about me specifically, but it's like when you talk to people like that, they're not confident enough in how good they are at the thing they do. They recognize that they are lucky, that maybe their level of success is either the peak or beyond what they actually deserve in terms of their actual talent and ability. And so they're holding on to their position with everything they can. They don't want to give you the secret or you a head start or pointers or like drop the ladder down for you to come up with them. No, you can tell by listening to Bill Maher that he, again, is not a guy who is just a funny guy. He's not the guy that was the talk of the lunch table in high school and middle school and making everybody laugh. He's not the guy in college that was killing it at parties. He's not that guy. He's not the guy on the job that everyone's like, oh, dude, you fucking hear what Bill did the other day? It's fucking hilarious. He's not that guy. There are a lot of those guys. There are a ton of genuinely funny people who are not all necessarily in show business or professional comedians or whatever you want to call what Bill Maher does. But Bill Maher doesn't want to acknowledge that because Bill Maher's entire claim to his status is his accolades. And this goes back to the thing we were talking about with like when you talk to somebody who's like highly educated, they have a PhD. It's like the same joke when they say like, how do you know if a person's a vegan? And it's like, well, talk to them for more than 5 minutes and they'll tell you. It's the same thing with somebody who like went to Harvard or like has a PhD. Like, all you need to do is just talk to them for more than 5 minutes, and that will come out in conversation. They will find some way to drop the fact that they went to an Ivy League school or have a master's or a PhD in this, because that's like a personality trait to them. That's their little certificate or their little title that says, I'm smart. So it's not like necessarily an earned level of people thinking you're smart. It's just, well, actually, I do have this piece of paper that says I'm smart. Are you going to tell me this piece of paper isn't real? How would I get this piece of paper if I'm not smart? It's like, okay, I mean, I'm not saying that you aren't smart because you have a PhD, but I am saying that like, it's not like it's not an automatic that just because you have these things and accolades and whatever, that necessarily means you're any better or any smarter than anyone else who maybe chose to go a different path with whatever intellect they have. But that's what being an elitist is. Being an elitist is using your accomplishments and accolades to fortify your opinion and other people's opinion of yourself. And Bill Burr knows that. Bill Burr knows that. And the fact that Bill Burr is so comfortable giving other people their flowers and saying like, dude, that guy was funnier than me. Like I'm talking guys that are just hilarious. And all Bill Maher can do is be like, really? No way. Well, not just because you're kids. And like, oh no, I mean, look, I guess I'm more of a fan of like verbal, I'm more of a fan of like intellectual humor. Like, okay, sure, your friend did something goofy at a bar, or like, but that's not, I'm Bill Maher. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being actually humorous. It's like, I mean, look, dude, like, can you just acknowledge that like people can be funny? They don't have to have a talk show in order to be funny. And just because you have a talk show doesn't mean that you're automatically funnier than anyone who doesn't have a talk show. And this, here's another kind of example of this we'll take a look at.
And my favorite part of that job was in between when we were driving. My buddy had this fucking sick ass, he had this F-150.
I bet he was funny about it.
Oh, he was fucking hilarious.
Okay.
He was fucking hilarious. Oh my God.
About the truck? Even?
Like,
That
dude,
good?
listen, I get it. You're not a knock-around guy. You looked up Latin words and you didn't fucking hang out with the fellas and they used to hang you by your underwear at the lockers. So now none of them are funny because this is your one thing. But I'm funny. They could never be as funny as me.
Well, that's...
Like, there's so much shit about you that's funny that you're not even trying to be funny. Your whole fucking outfit is hilarious.
My
I don't know what it
outfit,
is. Yeah.
A shirt and pants is an outfit?
You're dressed like that. You're going to sing that, what is that song? Splish Splash, I was taking a bath with your stupid little slippers that you're wearing.
And Bill Burr just calls it, just like we were talking about. He just calls it right out. That was a little bit down the line. They're talking about, jobs they had, and Bill Maher. Oh yeah, I bet your friend was real funny about it. And then he's like, I mean, look, dude, I get it. You weren't one of those dudes. You just were not one of the boys. You didn't hang out and just crack on each other and make each other laugh. And I love that he went further into it. It's like, look, you were the guy that they would all rag on, and you're just sitting there like, they're not truly funny like me. Like, they could never be as funny as me. It's like, nah, I mean, look, dude, like, this is your thing. Like, your whole thing is, I'm Bill Maher. I must be funny because I have a talk show. I must be funnier than you because I'm famous. And Bill Burr just does not let him have it. I love it. I honestly love it. As we go on, you can tell that, like, my respect and fandom of Bill Burr is just like the bar is just coming right back up to where it used to be, if not more. Bill Burr kills it on this episode, and I was not expecting to have this opinion, which is why I cannot stress enough to actually watch these things. It's a lesson I had to teach myself this week. And just one final example of this.
Can I share something about the Beatles with you without you making fun of me? Maybe you'll find it.
Bill, that's why I'm here.
Okay. So
to listen to you share your ideas about track 3.
See, I know. I just, even when I ask, it gets shot down. Okay, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's from their mid-period. That's 1965, Rubber Soul.
You were what, 28?
That was like the first album. That was the first album.
You bought your first Beatle boots?
I was 9. First album after Beatlemania.
Okay, so real quick, if he was 9 in 65, so he was born in 1956. So actually in 2009, he would have been 53. So just a slight little adjustment to all our math there. He was 37 or 36 when he got his DUI as a millennial in 1992, a 36-year-old millennial in 1992. And he was 53 in 2009, dating a 25-year-old. No judgments, just making sure we have all the numbers lined up.
Mania. So it's great. And that
Do you ever think that you're older than the hula hoop?
That period, I remember the hula hoop, that's true. And that period, Paul McCartney was with, his girlfriend was Jane Asher.
Uh-huh.
And he lived in her parents' apartment in the garret for like 3 years in the middle of London. I'm not making this up.
What's the garret?
The garret is like an attic. Like, the top of the apartment.
Well, we're in California. You could just say attic. And then after that, did they move? Did they move to the garage and put some basil on their fry up?
Knowing things and words, asshole.
That's an asshole thing to do. To use the English word for fucking attic in California.
Okay, but
I'm one more reference away from taking this mic off and just walking out. I want to make a list of all the things I didn't know, and I'm just going to fucking say them all to my wife tonight. She's like, who the fuck did you have? Are you on mushrooms? What are you talking?
Oh.
The Garrett.
We have to do Garrett. Garrott.
Brad Garrett.
Garrett, like Garrett. Yes, with an O. Not
so when he goes over there, they think his name's Brad Attic?
No. Like, you could just tell that it was a relationship that was like, I mean, it was the middle of, he's a Beatle in London. I don't know how but he liked, he was a guy who needed a family. He liked having a family. So he lived with the girlfriend's family in the fucking attic.
He's a relationship guy.
He's a relationship guy. Yes. What?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm not mocking it. I'm just.
I wasn't saying you were. Getting really defensive.
No, I'm just. It's back to my point. People are different. So different about that.
Yes, and that's why I have no problem with how you live your life. You are a happy
Good.
guy.
I am a happy guy, and you're a happy guy.
I am.
See, that's the thing. We found what makes us happy.
Yeah, and then you get into your ego, and not saying you, not metaphorically, hypothetically, generally, whatever the fuck you said,
Put it
Garrett-ly, is you start.
That was my favorite point of the whole podcast. I've been walking around all day today after watching this last night, just be like, Garrett Lee. Like, that's the kind of shit that's just funny, dude. Like, that's what funny is. It's not always a snarky monologue and like a great point made with sarcasm. It's like, dude, you just like that little just nud, like little knock, that little fucking like, you stupid fucking using words. I'm sorry. And then like literally like, I mean, that's like 2 minutes later, generally, metaphorically, Garrett Lee, whatever fucking word you said. That is what funny is. And Bill Maher cracks Bill Maher if they fused. Bill Maher. Bill Maher is cracking up at that. But that's what you're watching. Like he's bent over in laughter at that because of just how genuinely good of a knock that was. It's making fun of him. It's doing it in a very quick, they say brevity is the art of wit, meaning like, you know, the more concisely, the quicker you can get your point out, the wittier it is, you know. That's why the people say the left can't meme, because all their memes are like 3 paragraphs over a picture. It's like, this isn't how memes work, dude. You have to figure out how to make your point in like 7 words or less. That's how memes work. But he's bent over in laughter, but you know there's a part of him in his mind. It's like, dude, this guy is getting me. He is getting me. And he's getting him to a level that he can't compete on. You know? Like Bill Maher's versus like, I'm sorry, I know things, asshole. And it's like, that's not exactly Garrett-ly. It's not very Garrett-ly of you, Bill Maher. It's like, come on, man. You got a talk show, right? You're a humorist. You're a professional comedian. And this guy's making fucking Boston white trash jokes and just running circles around you. What does that tell you? And that's not the first time Bill Burr gets on him about like the pretentious words. Maher uses the term prima inter pares. I don't even know what it's like, a Latin word. It means like first among equals, when he was describing the Beatles, and Burr just goes in on like, what the hell did you just say? Was that 3 words? Was that 1 word? What the hell language was that? Like, it's just all the little things that normally I think people let slide in conversation when talking to people like that, or even like are impressed. Like other people like him are impressed by that. They're like, ooh, I've never heard that douchebag term before. Maybe I should include that in my lexicon of annoying fucking things to say to make people think I'm smart. And look, I'm not saying Bill Maher is a bad guy, but I am saying he is absolutely built up an identity around being the smartest, funniest guy in the room. And I'm not necessarily convinced that either of those things are true. Even among like regular people. I think Bill Maher is smarter than he is funny, but even he himself does not purport to be like a super, super smart guy. But the point being is like, I just we're going to get into the Palestine thing because that's like the biggest, most talked about segment. It's also surprisingly the thing I have the least to say about. Not just because we've covered that particular issue on the show before, and I don't feel the need to get back into it again, but just there's so many other elements of this podcast that I was not expecting to pick up on that I just found it just a great kind of like piece of history. And I still came out of this thinking both these guys are good guys. And I came out of this with a deeper respect for Bill Burr. Honestly, a deeper respect for Bill Maher for handling this like he did, and for being humble enough to like roll with the punches, you know? Like for having enough self-awareness to be like, yeah, I like he refers to himself like I am the pompous guy. Like I get that. Like I'm like the pompous professor type or whatever. And like at least he's not one of those guys that like doesn't think he's a smug asshole. Like there's something a little bit endearing about a smug asshole who knows he's a smug asshole. It's kind of like how gay guys can have like this extremely heightened level of like sarcasm and stuck-upness and just like cattiness, and it's like endearing. Like you don't see it the same way. Like a gay guy be like, "Oh, honey, what are you wearing? Oh my God, where'd you say you went to dinner last night? Oh my God, gross." It's like endearing. It's like, you fucking bitch. Like, but when a straight guy is like that, like, where did you say you went? You went there for dinner. You took her there. Like, it's like, all right, douche, fuck you. Who the fuck are you? It's like, it's just different. British people can be like that too. Oh, darling. Like certain people are allotted certain level of smugness. I don't get to have any smugness, nor do I deserve any smugness. I have zero earned smugness about my life. So I can speak to this with true authenticity. But there's certain types of people, like the Bill Maher type, where if they acknowledge and have a sense of humor about the fact that they are a stuck-up douche, it's almost like, okay, so you're the stuck-up douche guy. What sucks is the smug people that don't think they're smug, like the Catherine Hochul's, like the liberal politicians are a great example of that. Like they are stuck up, they are in the elite circles, they are going to Met Gala, and they are saying things like, you know, black kids don't even know what a computer is, or I'm sorry, don't even know what the word computer is. That's one step further than not knowing what a computer is. No, they just never even heard the word. And they can say things that are like so blatantly elitist and like out of touch and stuck up, smug. Like, how could you expect these people to know anything? I mean, they're just them. I mean, we're us. We get it, but they don't. And they don't, like a Catherine Hochul type person doesn't think of herself as a stuck up bitch. She doesn't. She doesn't. She thinks she's like a good guy. She thinks that like black people in the Bronx and wherever in Queens are like, yeah, I fuck with Hochul. Like, no, they don't, dude. Like, nobody likes you. But at least with Bill Maher, he's like, yeah, I'm the pompous, smug professor douchebag guy. Like, that's just me. Sorry. Asshole. It's like, yeah, kind of. But at least you acknowledge it. That makes it better. I respect that. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. Finally, the clip you've all been waiting for, the great Palestinian debate where the issue is solved by two comedians on a podcast drunk. Let's listen to this.
Do you perform in Cambridge?
Cambridge.
That's where Harvard is. For a guy like you,
I know that.
That's got to be the Taj Mahal. I love that
I
bugged
hate
you.
Harvard. Are you kidding? Have you heard what's going on college campuses these days?
I don't watch the news.
You don't realize that college campuses erupted with the kids demonstrating for Hamas? They are in with the terrorists.
They were for the Palestinians.
Well, it's sort of the same cause. Why, are you?
I'm on the side of the kids.
Yeah, that's easy to say. You know, no one wants to see kids dead. This is a war.
That was very brave of you to say that.
This is a war. No, I'm the one who's actually brave on this.
Pat yourself on the back.
It's easy to say I'm for the kids. Who's not for the kids?
Well,
it comes down to real hard-nosed decisions. Like a country.
Stop talking like you're a general.
A country got attacked. Israel got attacked.
I'm not saying that they didn't have a right to go back. I'm just sitting there going like, how do I look at what?
We're the only country in the world that they get attacked, and then as soon as they counterattack, it's like, well, we got to stop this shit now. Don't attack them. There's a very simple solution to all this problem in the Middle East. Stop attacking Israel.
Hey, you
Stop
just solved
attacking
it.
Israel.
You just solved it.
I actually did.
There you go. That's fantastic.
Anyway.
All right.
We don't need to get onto that.
Let's go to Russia and the Ukraine. How do you solve that one, Bill? Let me hear your hard-nosed decision about that. Well, let me ask you a question. How is war still legal? With all this shit that's been canceled.
Legal.
Why is that still fucking legal?
Would you like a real answer to that? Because for something to be illegal, you have to have the capacity to enforce it. And you can't enforce against war, or else you have to go to war with the country that's going to war. And we don't want to go to war with Russia over Ukraine. What would be the sense of making it illegal? Oh, that's really going to stop Putin. No. To stop people from going to war, you have to also put
You can't sit down and talk it out. Why can't Putin do a podcast with the head guy? Like, you just solved the Middle East on a podcast. Why can't they solve what they're doing on a podcast?
This is why this is not your thing.
Make some hard-nosed decisions. It's not your thing. It's what you.
It is my thing.
It isn't your thing.
This is not your thing.
You're like that guy that has a fantasy football team and thinks he's a fucking GM.
No.
That's exactly what it is. Like, why am I fucking listening to you like you've done something? What have you done in Washington? Nothing.
No, I would never go to Washington.
It's beneath you.
No, it would. Look,
You would be the coolest fucking guy in Washington. You showed up with those boots
it would be so
and no
easy.
tie. They'd be like, oh my God.
It'd be so easy to
Did
be
Kevin Bacon just come back to that Footloose town?
Kevin Bacon.
You could teach him how to dance, Bill.
Yeah, I absolutely could.
Bound. You fucking get off your little private jet. I have a TV show.
And you travel Southwest, is that right, Bill?
I love Southwest.
Really?
I love the order.
Is that how you travel?
So that was the thing that everyone was talking about, and now you kind of I would imagine can see what I meant by that was kind of the culmination of the whole everything. And this is the interesting dichotomy, and this is why I find things like this to be so intriguing. Is in the context of the conversation itself, I'm on Bill Maher's side. Like, I don't, as I've said a billion times on the show, I don't have a super strong opinion on the whole Israel-Palestine thing. Both factions annoy me to no end. I have an endless list to say about both Israel and Palestine. Trust me. If I had to pick who's probably more right in the conflict, I would lean Israel. But moreover, I just really wish I prefer to stay not involved with that. I spoke mostly at length about the annoying protests on college campuses, which happen to be in favor of Palestine and by proxy Hamas for a lot of people, and how annoying that was and how juvenile that was. And I do agree that, like, yeah, saying like I side with the kids it's a safe thing to say. I don't think Bill Burr is saying it to be safe. I think he's saying it because he doesn't have a super complex political perspective on the issue. Nor do I. Nor do most people that have very hard-nosed opinions about the issue. I think Bill Burr is just the type of guy that is funny, and that's what's interesting about it, is because you can listen to the Bill Burr podcast, and because he lives in L.A. and because he's got a black wife who's like very liberal by all accounts from what I can tell, and he has kids now, and he's like kind of like in the in crowd in Hollywood all of a sudden, like his political takes are becoming increasingly more lefty, liberal-ish. He's not like a full-on liberal by any stretch of the imagination, but he definitely like he's more likely to point fun at the conservative side than the liberal side. I think if you like did an actual study on his recent jokes and bits, he's definitely sides probably more with the leftish side. Which is obviously, I'm not shy about, admitting my conservative right-leaning bias on this show. So, you would imagine that a lot of the stuff he talks about when he gets into politics, he kind of loses me a little bit, but not completely, because he's still funny about it. And that's a superpower, I've always said, if I can make you laugh, I can make you listen. And he's one of those guys that like you're amused listening to him. So it almost kind of like sneaks his points in your brain without you knowing that you're being persuaded. And that's kind of the thing that Bill Maher doesn't have. Bill Maher knows more about the subject, I guarantee it. And it's not just because I happen to kind of align more with his take on it. But Bill Maher doesn't have the humor ability to persuade someone based off of just being funny and amusing alone, where they're making kind of sense, but like not really, but it's so funny that you're like, yeah, I see where he's coming from. This guy's fucking like. Bill Maher leans more on like saying things that are like correct and sarcastically being correct. But what Bill Burr does well here is he points out that like, yeah, man, like, who the hell are you? Which again is a fair point, but not really. Because it's like, okay, do I have to be a politician to have an opinion? Do I have to be an Israeli or a Palestinian to have an opinion? Or can I just be someone who has looked into this subject to a great degree and has taken the time to educate myself on what's going on and have now formed an opinion? Like, do I have to have passed a bill in Washington to criticize politicians in Washington? Like, are the only people that Bill Burr criticizes other comedians? I don't think so. You know, you don't have to be the thing to have an opinion on it. That in and of itself is a form of elitism. I can't say it right. I wish I was more elite so I could learn how to pronounce that word. Elitism. But so again, that's another point that I give to Bill Maher, even though it was Bill Burr's point. I think it was an unfair point to make. But again, just like the whole 50-something-year-old guy with a 25-year-old girlfriend, if it's an isolated incident, it's whatever, you look past it. But when it coincides with all the other things that we're talking about, then it becomes just another example, just another sprinkle on the ice cream cone. Because we have the foundational context after an hour of this show and just knowing both of them for the past 30 years, minimum, we know that Bill Maher is one of those guys that's like, new rule. Listen up, guys. I mean, look, you could, if you notice, if you go back and watch that segment again, the second this topic comes up, his demeanor completely changes, Bill Maher's. He goes immediately into talk show mode. Like his body language shifts, the way he's sitting shifts, his tone shifts, and he goes into that, look, when it comes down to this, you have to make real hard-nosed, like he goes into monologue mode. I don't know if you noticed that, but watch it again. You'll see what I'm talking about. Immediately when it shifts to politics, he switches into this, like, he gets on a pedestal. He puts himself on a pedestal and begins to deliver the talking points. And that's probably just a matter of habit. I mean, he does it for a living, for his entire career. But Bill Burr, I think, is more pointing out that. Like the fact that he uses the term like hard-nosed decisions. It's like, all right, if you want to have an opinion and you want to like espouse it, that's great. But when you start hearing the buzzwords, then it's a dead giveaway that somebody's delivering like a political talking point. You know? It's like when my brother was talking about arguing with his friends about Trump, and they're like, really? How could you possibly support that guy? All he does is spew this hateful rhetoric. It's like, dude, you've never said any of those words in real life. Spew, hateful, or rhetoric. But yet, all of a sudden, when we're talking about politics or Trump, he spews hateful rhetoric. You clearly heard that from someone. You clearly saw that on a post. You clearly have understood that to be like a talking point, and now you're just parroting it. You're regurgitating it as your opinion. You're basically like plagiarizing it. And so when Bill Maher goes into, you have to make real hard-nosed decisions. It's like, all right, now you sound like he said, what are you, a fucking general? Like, no, dude. At the end of the day, just acknowledge you're a guy who's made an entire career out of being a political commentator, not a politician. You've never made one decision for the country. Not one of your opinions have ever been made to be held to a certain level of accountability. Like when certain people make a political decision, they actually have ramifications. When you make a decision about politics or have an opinion, it's just your opinion. There's no like one way or the other, just like what you think about it. And that's fine. Like I said earlier, you don't have to be a politician to have political opinions. But when you start talking like you're in the war room, when you start talking like you're an authority on the subject, as opposed to just a person who has an opinion that may very well be correct and more well-informed than the person you're arguing with, as soon as you assume that higher level of authority in the conversation, that's when you expose yourself to be torn down. And that's exactly what Bill Burr did. It's almost a masterclass in debate, because if this conversation went on for longer than 3 minutes, like it did, Bill Burr loses that debate. He does, in my opinion. Bill Burr loses that debate. But he doesn't fight Bill Maher's battle. He attacks Bill Maher at his weak point. Bill Burr's weak point is he's not really that educated politically from everything I can tell. He's not stupid about politics, but he's not a political guy. It's not like his main thing. It is Bill Maher's main thing. But again, Bill Burr's main thing is that he's a hilarious guy who knows how to get under your skin and knows how to pick out the things that you have weak points. And Bill Maher's weakness is he's not that type of guy. So Bill Maher gets kind of visibly excited to get, like, finally have a conversation where it's his wheelhouse, to be like, all right, now here's my time to shine. You just fucked up, dude. Like, you just started a real political conversation. I'm about to fucking bury you. And then Bill Burr's like, who the fuck are you? A fucking general? Hard-nosed decisions? Why don't we just solve it on a podcast? What have you done in Washington? Nothing? Nothing. I haven't done nothing. Spoiled, though. It's a masterclass. And look, that's called being smart, by the way. That's what intelligence is. And I've said this point before, and I'll close out this podcast, this show, by saying the same thing. This is a difference between being smart and educated. I'm not saying Bill Maher is not smart, but people from an outside perspective would not generally consider Bill Burr to be a quote-unquote intelligent, smart guy. And that's wrong. Bill Burr is obviously a smart guy. It's even more impressive when someone doesn't lean into their intelligence and their education and all that stuff and still can just naturally make good points and think critically. And that's what Bill Burr exhibits. Educated is knowing things. That's not a measure of intelligence. How much you know is not a measure of intelligence. How well you think is a measure of intelligence. I've used this example before. I'll say it again. An educated person, you can tell 2 + 2 = 4, 3 + 3 = 6, 4 + 4 = 8. But then if you go, all right, what's 5 + 5? And they go, well, you haven't told me, you haven't educated me to that yet. Once you tell me, they'll know it and they'll be educated. But they don't have the intelligence necessarily. They may or they may not. They don't have the intelligence to synthesize the information they do know into how to figure out information that they don't know. An intelligent person, you can say 2 + 2 = 4. See, I'm dumb as shit. I don't even know what that is. 2 + 2 = 4, 3 + 3 = 6, 4 + 4 = 8. Okay, what's 5 + 5? And they'll go, okay, well, I'm starting to notice a pattern here. So 2 + 2 = okay, so yeah, 10 is equal 10 because it's just like 5 and 5. That's what an intelligent person does. So intelligence has nothing to do with how much you know. It's your ability to think and process information. I would say Bill Burr and Bill Maher are at least of equal intelligence. If not, I would say Bill Burr is actually a smarter guy than Bill Maher. Hot take. Hot take to close out the show. I think Bill Burr is a more intelligent person than Bill Maher. Bill Maher is far more educated and knowledgeable than Bill Burr. But the way you see this dynamic of this show work, the way that Bill Burr has the natural social intelligence and the ability to just pick apart Bill Maher, this supposedly highbrow dude that's like, I got the right answer for everything, and he just gets picked apart, and all of a sudden he has this body language and like this demeanor of like a little nerd getting picked on at the lunch table. What you're watching is a very smart man in Bill Burr who does not, make his bones in proclaiming that he's smart, but just able to absolutely pick apart Bill Maher, who is incredibly educated and researches all this stuff and has good, solid, founded opinions, but naturally is not as funny and naturally is not as intelligent. And I don't mean that as an insult because I still think both of them are far smarter than the average person, Bill Maher included. But yeah, I find all this interesting. I think that's a worthwhile dose of stuff to think about going into the weekend, folks. My name is Jimmy Selesky. You're watching live from the studio. New content every Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Hit the subscribe, please. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be cool if you did that? Leave us a like, comment, dislike, unsubscribe. Till next time. Peace.